I'm really into kombucha right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so I make my own, but I'm also, trying different organic kombuchas out there, which is really cool. My name is Roxanne Beavers. I'm a reviewer and I'm based in Canada. I'm going to talk about certifying organic in Canada. So CORE, which is kind of colloquial, it's the Canada Organic Regime. And that it really is made up of the Canadian Organic Standard, the Permitted Substances List, so 2 documents, and then the Organic Products Regulations. And so all of those things together sort of govern how organic is managed in Canada. The standard describes the processes you would follow in your operation if you were a farmer or a processor. And the permitted substances list, it includes things like ingredients, inputs, and then even things like cleaners, sanitizers, the things that you can use that are permitted, that are permitted for organic production. So you have the standard, the PSL, and then the regulation. Then, because we don't change the standard very frequently in Canada, there's another group called the Standards Interpretation Committee, and they issue responses to questions, more interpretations of the standards, so that's a really useful thing to be aware of. All of those are posted on the Organic Federation of Canada's website, and they're actually mandatory parts of the regime as well. There are different types of certificates in Canada, which is kind of unique to our country. And there's 3 different types to be aware of. So the first one, if you're growing crops or raising livestock, or if you're making an organic product, you would get an organic product certificate. If you are only repacking something, not changing it at all, not reprocessing it, or if you're putting a label on something, then you get a different kind of certificate called an organic packing and labeling certificate. And if you are providing a service for somebody, but you don't actually own the product, you get something called an attestation of compliance. This one is a voluntary it's a voluntary process, I guess. So you would see it for somebody who might be like a seed cleaner who might take grain from somebody, clean it, and return it to them. They don't own the product, but they do provide a service, and so this is a way to just regulate and oversee the processes they're doing to make sure organic integrity is preserved. In Canada, our regulations only cover basically agricultural products, things that are food and animal feed, livestock feed, and then plants actually as well. So it doesn't cover things like textiles or pet foods, doesn't cover cosmetics, and it also doesn't cover natural health products. So all of those things are outside of the scope of organic certification in Canada. It may be possible to certify them to a different regime within Canada though, so you can always ask QAI about that. One thing to be aware of is that you have a 3-year transition period. And then in that last year of transition, for people who are growing crops or raising livestock, you need to be under the supervision of a certifier. And you actually have to have your application in 15 months before you plan to market your crop. So this is, it's an important thing to be aware of if you are doing, say, something like maple syrup, to make sure that you have it way in advance. So you're going to have a certain inspection in that transitional year. You're going to have an inspection before you get your certificate. So you could have 2 inspections prior to being able to sell your product as organic. That doesn't apply to, containerized greenhouses or processors, or in some cases, livestock. For processors, another unique aspect of the Canadian Organic Standard is that they actually have a list of cleaners and sanitizers that they prefer that you use. So these are things that potentially have less impact. They're kind of the preferred organic choices. If, as a processor, you can't use those to clean your equipment, if, for whatever reason your equipment isn't getting cleaned properly, you can apply and get special permission, basically, to use a different cleaner or sanitizer. We have a really detailed amount of information about livestock, stocking rates and feed, and all kinds of livestock, rabbits. It's a very detailed standard. There's a couple of special sections to be aware of in the standard. So apiculture, bees and honey and bee products, maple syrup, greenhouses, sprouts and microgreens. I'm going to forget one. Mushrooms. So if you're producing any of these things, or if you're making products with these ingredients, to just check that section of the standard. Make sure you're following all of those rules, because they don't always jump out if you don't read that section. The last thing would be that our standard is different than the US standard, but there's a couple of things that they've determined need to be checked if you're importing American ingredients into Canada. We don't allow the use of Chilean nitrate at all, which is permitted under the NOP. And we also don't allow products from hydroponics. So those are the two major issues between our country's equivalency arrangement. If you're importing those ingredients, you need to make sure that those two things are attested to if you're bringing in product from the States.